Great Shepherd has begun. What the Great Shepherd has begun.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Deacon Derek Walcott. Welcome to Shepherd's Corner. And yes, last week you had me in pink suspenders. This week you have Archbishop Jason, but he's not in studio. He's all the way in Barbados. Now, he's been sending us a curveball. So for the next 60 minutes, we're going to discuss a time and a season for everything. Good evening, Archbishop Jason.
Good evening, Derek. Good to be with you across the waters and good to be back on Shepherd's Corner again. I kind of missed it last week when I was in Bahamas, but I was doing other important things on the Thursday evening.
I heard you were, you had a retreat in the Bahamas. And how did that go?
Oh, it was excellent. You know, they have this concept of a citywide mission where they have one mission for the whole of the city and all the other churches shut down and everybody comes to this one mission. They have a hall that holds about 2,000 people and everybody is a really great expression of church and a wonderful Lenten experience to see everybody from different parishes come together to really celebrate a Lenten penance and a Lenten mission.
Wow. 2,000 people getting together for a retreat. That must have been amazing. The energy must have been something else.
Oh, the energy was wonderful. Great, great, wonderful.
Okay, I'm going to bring you into your topic this evening, which is a time and a season for everything. Now, why are you asking Catholics not to partake in Catholic-like activities during Lent? Now, that's going to be a challenge because of where we have evolved.
Are you saying Catholic-like activities or carnival-like activities?
Boy, so many Catholics in this thing. I throw in the Catholics, but it's carnival-like activities.
Because I'm asking Catholics to take part in Catholic-like activities during Lent. Ashes, Ash Wednesday, fasting, praying, celebrating Eucharist, a lecture mortification, upping on the prayer, upping on the almsgiving, upping on the way of fasting and abstinence. Those are the activities for Lent. There is a creeping movement that has happened over the last years, decade or 2 decades. Up to maybe 20, 25 years ago, Lent ended or began very abruptly midnight on Tuesday. Carnival ended very abruptly midnight on Tuesday. And the Lenten period was then celebrated with great pomp and ceremony by austerity, by fasting, by abstinence, by almsgiving, by people giving up something for Lent. And there was a whole culture of people who were, you know, we used to play break Lent. You remember that? Mm-hmm. Where if you knew somebody had given up soft drinks and you see them drinking a soft drink, where they broke Lent.
Yes.
And you tell them they broke Lent, and it was a whole penalty they had to pay. And so we had a whole culture around the celebration of the Lenten time. That's not because we're into morbidity or because we're into somehow penance and so for its own sake. But it is because there is a rhythm to life. And if in life you treat every day like if it is a major feast day, right, then you'll have no feast days because every day will be at that same pitch. And one of the important things in life is how we intersperse our celebrations with our fasting and with our ordinary time with our feasting time. And you know, the book of Ecclesiastes has a wonderful quotation: a time for everything under heaven.
Right.
A time to live, a time to die, a time for planting, a time for reaping, a time for gathering, a time for sowing. And we have to understand that we have to live with times and seasons. And for some reason, we have allowed the season of Lent to be packed into by other kinds of carnival-like activities that are good in their own right and appropriate for their own time, but I'm asking Catholics to not participate in those activities, to observe Lent as Lent, so that as Lent we observe the austerity, we live in a different mode, and we allow ourselves to enter into this season of grace for its own sake.
You know, Archbishop Jay, you have some people outside there that will challenge us and say, listen, calypso, soca, that's part of our culture. And you are saying to us that at the start of Lent, we should drop our culture as far as calypso and soca is concerned.
Yes.
What do you have? How do you respond to those who would say things like that?
Well, of course, carnival and calypso and all of these things are part of our culture. But on Christmas Day, we live a different religious culture, don't we? And on Easter Sunday, we live a different religious culture. But during Lent, we should live a different religious culture also. Because, you see, the whole understanding of the Carnival, Lent, Easter is really a very important thing for the Catholic. The rest of the society, I'm not asking that they ban it or they stop it or they don't have for the rest of the society. But I'm simply asking Catholics that we become much more conscious of the time and the season. So the big high point is Easter. And Easter is this incredible celebration where we come through these 40 days of preparation and we come to the magnificent moment where we celebrate again Christ is risen from the dead. So the 40 days of Lent are a long preparation for the celebration of Easter. The Carnival is a long preparation for the celebration of Lent. Now, how would it be if on Easter Sunday we want to go around with sackcloth and ashes, and we want to do penance, and we want to start fasting, and we say, no, we're not partaking in anything festive on Easter Sunday? People will say, but you have to be mad. Now, we understand that when Easter Sunday comes, that's a high point celebration. We must also understand when Ash Wednesday comes, that's a low point celebration. That we come down into the ashes, we descend down into the ashes of our penance, our fasting, our sacrifice. We strip ourselves of the normal rhythm of ordinary time, and we put on this new rhythm of the purple of the Lent, and we come down into a kind of an austerity, so that we come up again in the Easter Sunday to the celebration of the resurrection.
Is that what you mean when you say these times are given to us for a sacred purpose?
That's what I'm meaning. You see, the rhythm of the Carnival, Lent, Easter is a rhythm of the soul. It's a rhythm that is meant to really move the soul and to put the soul into a new motion, a new rhythm. And we have to observe the rhythm if we're going to observe the soul work that we're going to do, and if we're going to observe the depth that we're going to go to. Now, yes, everything is good for a season and for a time, but we must also understand there's a time and a season for everything. And as Catholics, if we're going to go for the spiritual depth that we want to go for, to experience ourselves as beloved disciples, to come into that place of missionary discipleship, if we want to go there, then there are disciplines that we must obey. One of the things about Trinidad and Tobago is that we hate any restriction on discipline whatsoever.
Yes.
We want it all. We want it up front. We want it as we want it, and when we want it, and how we want it, and then some. Well, you know, we can subject ourselves to spiritual discipline for the sake of the spiritual depth that we want to go for. And that is what I'm proposing, because a sacrifice is giving up something that is good for something that is better. And let us understand, I'm not asking that we give it up because it is evil, it is bad, or it is somehow wrong. I'm saying we giving up something good for something that is better. Giving up the festivity for something that is better, which is the depth of spirituality and the depth of encounter with God that we are all seeking.
But would you say then that because we've lost that sense of boundary, that there must be a time and season for everything, it reflects in our society? And because of that, we've seen a fall away from discipline. We've seen a fall away from understanding our own selves and how important it is to have these boundaries in our lives and these different seasons in our lives. Because it's like the whole year is a carnival.
And that's the problem. The problem is we used to celebrate the Mass. Now we're playing ourselves whole year round.
Yeah.
And so the 2 days of carnival is incidental to the whole year of activities. We, to understand sacredness, so if you look at the Gospels, there were several times when Jesus went to a sacred season.
Yeah.
Like when he went up to Jerusalem for the Feast of the Tabernacles and the celebration that, or the Paschal meal that he celebrated. There are these seasons in our religious life, in our religious imagination, that when we enter into them properly and deeply, they do something for us. They instruct us in our inner core about the things that we're supposed to live and do in the whole rest of our year. But when we are not observing the ritual, when we've given up on the practice, when we blur the distinction between the carnival and the Lent, when every day is every day,
yes,
then there is no boundary and there's no container. And then we don't have a shape for the soul. And then we can't come to the spiritual depth that we have been created by God to come to. And that's the thing that I'm most encouraged by and the thing that I am most after, that we find a path for every Catholic, for every Trinidadian and Tobagonian to come to the spiritual depth that we are capable of coming to. And to do that, we have to do something different from what we have been doing before.
Okay. Let me challenge something here. Because your businessman on Arapita Avenue with the 1,000,001 bars that's selling plenty alcohol and they jamming and whining 365 days a year, they're going to say, boy, Archbishop Jason is telling me that during the Lenten period, I have to sell less alcohol and change my music.
If he's a Catholic businessman,
you know they're Catholic businessmen.
then he has a challenge. But and I am not inflicting this on the whole population.
Yeah.
I am asking Catholics to be conscious, to celebrate the seasons of the church, to celebrate with great dedication. That's what I am asking. Other people live by their traditions.
Right.
When the Muslims have their month of Ramadan, nobody says that they're bad for business. Nobody says that, because and their fast for the month of Ramadan is a very holy and a very deep and profound fast. Nobody comes with the challenge that you come in with. That is a foolish challenge. That's a challenge of a spiritual neophyte who doesn't understand that God is always important and more important than all the earthly things that we're involved in. And that's the cause of the deepest ailment of Trinidad and Tobago. We're trying to fix the problem at the same level of the problem. We have to fix the problem at a deeper level than the problem exists. The deeper level is that we have to recover our spiritual traditions. We have to find a path back to the spiritual depth that our grandparents used to have and the wisdom that our grandparents used to have. We have to recover that and we have to come back to that if we're going to fix the problem that everybody's lamenting about in Trinidad and Tobago.
No, I agree, you know. It's just that a lot of the businesses...
You're back now?
No, I'm backing down.
You're on the back foot?
No, listen to this one, Archbishop J. They are going to say, listen, Archbishop J, does he know that 300,000 Catholics live in this country? And maybe it's a lot of the Catholics that are partaking in this 365 carnival time. And I know that you're talking to the faithful.
And then you're making your business on bad vibes, because then your business is peddling spiritual shallowness, and your business is peddling a form of living where people are being enticed away from the spiritual depth that they were created for. Then I would have to say to you, well, let the chips fall where they may.
Well, the chips falling. The chips are falling because, when we look after this, in the end, and this is the truth, it's all about the almighty dollar. And we have forgotten, the importance of ritual. We've forgotten that the seasons and the rhythm they establish offer, according to your words, a path to grace through what the ancients would call catharsis.
Catharsis is the purgation. It is the purging. It is the purification. Anybody who is interested in their health would do a dietary purge. They call it now a cleansing. Well, Lent is a time for spiritual cleansing. And anybody who isn't into the health scene at all will have a time in the year where they will go and they will do a cleansing and then renew their body of and empty the body of the toxins and come back to the table to pick back up the ordinariness of their life. And that's what Lent is. It's a time. The catharsis is the purging. It's the emptying of yourself. It's the emptying of the emotions. There are many different notions around carnival. One notion is the pressure cooker valve. Mm-hmm. That the carnival allows the valve, like the valve in the pressure cooker, it allows the steam of the society to be eased out so the thing don't explode.
Right.
There are many different theories. So that comes from a Russian theorist called Bakhtin. And that was his theory. But if you keep letting out the pressure, eventually you'll have no pressure in the pressure cooker. It don't cook the meat.
Yeah.
So you have to know when to let the pressure out. You have to know when to hold the pressure too. And the problem is we want to live the whole of our life by just letting the pressure out and not by holding the pressure at any stage in our life. And holding the pressure is the sacrifice that we are asked to make for Lent. And I'm saying, I'm going to sound like a stuck record. If we're not prepared to make the sacrifices, then we're not going to come to the spiritual depth. We're not going to become the best version of ourselves. And we're not going to find the solutions to the challenges that are facing us in Trinidad and Tobago, in our families, among our children, and in the next generation. We're not going to have that energy, that spiritual wisdom that we will need to really embrace Trinidad and Tobago with two hands and help our nation to come to where we need to come to.
Now, I'm going into your article. And here's the challenge. The challenge is the baby boomers, you and I, we grew up with we grew up with strong boundaries. And yet, the baby boomers didn't raise their children with the same clarity around the boundaries. So they're the ones that party and hearty, and we're the ones who run in the businesses.
Yeah, or wearing the pink suspenders, depending on how you want to look at it.
Let me raise my hand in the air.
You see, something interesting happened. So my parents' generation, those were the traditionalists, they raised us with pretty strong boundaries.
Right.
And no matter how poor or rich a household you came from within Trinidad and Tobago, you had certain boundaries that were inflexible. You knew that when the light went on the light pole, yes, you better had be home.
Right.
You knew if you were talking and you were saying something and your mother gave you the eye, you know, shut up, turn around and leave. You knew that children were to be seen but not heard. You knew that when an adult came, you respected that adult.
Yes.
If you're out in the street somewhere and you met an adult and that adult corrected you, you thanked them and you left politely, hoping that they didn't
Didn't
tell
call.
their parents nothing about the encounter.
That's right.
There were a whole set of boundaries within the family, within the community, and within the wider society that help a child to understand the sacred container that contained them. What happened is we grew up then and this is the baby boomer generation, because when we were growing up, there was such a economic boom during our time, and especially the last 30, 40 years of Trinidad and Tobago has had such an economic boom that we have literally spoiled the children of the baby boomer generation.
Yeah.
We've spoiled them. So they don't sit at a table and eat a meal anymore.
I agree.
They don't live by any sense of time or season. Anything is anything. And they live in such an individualistic way, and they have been allowed to live in a way where they don't really have clear boundaries set for them anymore. And so that generation has grown up and not had the benefit of parenting.
Yeah.
And it's not their fault. It's our fault. It is my generation's fault that has brought this upon our society and brought this upon our children. And that lack of boundary that they have experienced has also become a very loose spiritual boundary, and that has meant a much higher rate of addiction.
Yes.
When children don't have good boundaries, what flows is addiction.
Yes.
And it is the addictive nature of this generation that has really been the hallmark. And that is so not because of them. That's our fault. We didn't love them enough to give them strong boundaries. You know why? We wanted them to be our friends, and we wanted
Yes.
them to be our buddies, and we wanted them to be our pals and our sisters and our brothers. And we missed our vocation as parents.
As parents,
So
I agree.
when you have a generation that has experienced no boundaries, you have a society that pushes hard at every boundary. Of course, it's going to push back at anybody who's going to say, here's a boundary, let's try and keep this one. Of course, that's going to be pushed back harder. And that's okay for me. That's okay. Parents weren't there to be liked. That's not the job of a parent. The job of an archbishop is not to be liked by everybody, but it is to help people to find a path to spiritual depth. That's my role. That's what I have been called for, to be archbishop, to create a path to spiritual depth so that people understand if they want to come to depth, there's some things we need to do, and one of the things we need to do is start living within boundaries. And even the boundaries of spending, we're not spending within our boundaries, within our limits, we're spending more than we have. So all of these things that we do in the ordinariness of our daily activity, Lent is a time when we stand back now, we look at all of these things, we do the checklist, we do the repentance, we check back in with God, and we ask God to help us to live now within the boundaries that He has created us to live within, and to do so with a joyful spirit of repentance.
You know, just listening to you, you know, I'm reflecting on my own life, I'm reflecting on my own parenting. And yes, you know, that challenge, and you hear it so much with the baby boomers, I don't want my children to go through the same thing that I went through. I don't want them to be needy. So we basically lavish every material thing, you know, on them. And they've lost this whole sense of, you know, in terms of the price that you have to pay, what it costs. Yes, working for it. You have chores, you know, you have chores to perform. You just don't live in this house for free, you know, and we sit at dinner time at 7 o'clock every night. You know, that has fallen away. We give them everything that they need, and so we're facing the backlash.
Except what they want and need the most.
Amen.
Which is boundaries.
Amen.
A child needs boundaries. And when we fail to give them boundaries, we actually fail to love them adequately. It's a deep, deep failure that is very difficult for children to recover from. They think they get a great deal when there are no boundaries.
Yeah.
But then later on in life, they realize that there was no deal, because they realize that there is nothing containing their soul, and therefore addictions and the whole thing just doesn't hold together.
Yeah. You
That's
actually,
the
yeah, you actually put it in like this. You said, we have no sacred container for our soul. Now,
yes.
uh, good evening, viewers. We'd like you to call in at any time if you would like to ask the Archbishop a question on this whole topic of a time and a season for everything. Because whether you are a baby boomer, whether you are the new generation, or whether you are the traditionalist, I'm quite sure that you have some questions and some challenges and things that you would like to ask the Archbishop on this specific topic. Archbishop G, you said Lent is a time for enforcing boundaries.
Yes, I did.
And you said,
or as they would say in Bahamas, yes, sir.
yes. You said the fact that God is God means that I am not omniscient. It means that I need to bow and humble myself before this God. And this is a boundary that we humans are having much trouble with now.
That's right. We want God to be our paliwali because that's how our parents wanted to be with us.
Yeah.
And because the parents stopped being the parents and wanted to become buddies with the kids, the sense of otherness and of brutality is something that a whole generation has missed. And when we deal with God as if God is the one I pitched marbles with when I was growing up, which is an aspect of the relationship, huh? That familiarity and that intimacy is an aspect of the relationship. But there's a second aspect of the relationship that is
Yes.
equally true.
Yes.
So Rudolph Otto wrote that book, the terrible and the wonderful, the awesome and the terrible, as two aspects of God. That the encounter with God is always going to be terrifying to us, but the encounter with God is always going to be wonderful to us too. And when we only try to hold one side of the equation, just the wonderful side, and not the terror, not that sense of,
Yeah.
of the radical otherness of God.
Mm-hmm.
You see, when we have this genuine encounter with the divine, the ego starts screaming because the ego comes face to face with the truth that it is only a false self. It is not a true self. You know what ego is? Edging God out.
We have
So
a call.
when God comes in,
Uh-huh.
the ego is edged out.
So we have a call tonight, Archbishop J. Good evening. Welcome to Shepherd's Corner.
Hi, good evening. Good evening. My pleasure. My pleasure.
Welcome.
I wanted to ask His Grace two questions, and it has to do with Lent. Lent, as we know, is supposed to be a very solemn period for us in church, and I wanted to hear his perspective on marriages during the time of Lent. That's the first question. And the second question is, traditionally in church we would normally have, at the end of the Mass, we have the announcements, like birthdays and anniversaries and so on. And I wanted to hear his perspective again on having those types of announcements take place during Lent. And even outside of the whole Lenten period. I know it's not liturgical, but I just wanted to hear what is his perspective on it, if it's something that the church should actually encourage. Thank you.
The caller needs to clarify a little bit more about families and Lent, because I didn't quite understand the point of question he was asking.
Right. You know,
Is it just
Hello?
are you still there?
Yes, I am.
So your first question was what? Let's just recall that first question.
Okay, the first question was that I wanted to hear His Grace's perspective on having marriages take place during Lent.
Oh, weddings.
Yes, wedding.
All right.
Weddings. Gosh.
And the
Yes.
second question has to do with announcements that would normally take place. You know, traditionally we would normally have the celebration of birthdays and anniversaries and so on take place at the end of the Mass. I wanted to hear from him if he believes it is something that should be encouraged. I know that it's not liturgical, but I just wanted to know if he felt it's something that
You
the
know,
church should
to
do.
the second question.
Right.
Okay.
Wonderful.
You know, in one sense, we discourage weddings during Lent because you really shouldn't have flowers on the altar and festivities and things like that. And there's a good reason for it because of the austerity of the season and so on. But having said that, you know, I was ordained a priest during Lent. But let me add, I was ordained a priest on March the 19th, which is St. Joseph's Day, which is a solemnity in the church. And during Lent is the one guaranteed day of festivity in the midst of the sea of Lent. So that's the day when you can sing the Gloria. That's the day when you can have the flowers. That's the day when you can have the celebration, because it is such a high solemnity that it is not Lent itself. So again, that's the contrast. So yes, we really discourage the weddings during the Lenten time. And it is because the wedding is such a joyous, celebratory time that we want you to have a joyous, celebratory time in a time of joy and celebration. In the Easter time, in the ordinary time of the year, in all these other moments that are possible. So that's kind of the tradition around the weddings and the Lent. About the celebrations of birthdays and anniversaries. Now that's not liturgy, as you rightly said, but it is good community building, because we have to celebrate each other, and it's one way that people get to know about each other and get to learn about each other and the high points of their lives, their birthdays, their anniversaries. There was in one of the chapels in the Grenadines, my room, there was the usual call for birthday celebrations after Mass. And this foreigner who was a Yoti stood up, and when the congregation sang happy birthday for him, he cried. He wept because nobody had wished him happy birthday for that day. And it just overwhelmed him, the kind of love that he experienced from that congregation. And we don't know in our congregation who are the people who the only time they might get wished a happy birthday might be at that Mass and in that celebration and have a prayer for it and be prayed for and therefore be honored and be brought to God in that time. So I would say that is really on the human level a good human community building thing that we do in doing the human thing of recognizing the celebrations of those who are in our congregation.
You know, sometimes we do also acknowledge visitors who've come to our country, you know, and we just say, well, welcome, it's good to have you here. But we have another call, Archbishop Jason. Good evening.
Good night. Good evening to both of you. Nice seeing you. What I call to say is this. Parents have their, I could remember when my daughter made her first daughter, not her first child, but the only daughter. And as a baby, she said what? She is most cherished. I said, no, God is first. And we treat our children in the way as if they are better than God. You let the children do anything they want. And when you tell them about sparing the rod and spoiling the child, people now turn the whole Bible around to how some of them turn it around to how they want it. Nobody tell you to beat your child with a piece of wood or a piece of iron. But the fact of the matter, this child has to know that you are the parent. And where I see it now, a lot of parents want to be friends with their children. I don't see it that way. I see as a mother, I have to put my foot down. I would tell you this is wrong, and I am the boss here. Not in a bad way, but in a way that make you know you have to learn to listen because it would be good for you. Now I am praying for children in my area. These children are, I cannot even, some of them, I cannot even mention it on the phone because what I've seen, it is not good. I'm praying that God would send the Holy Spirit upon them and they would find Him. Because I pray all the time that these children would find God. Even the parents, because some of the parents I don't know. I don't know what prayers they're saying. I don't know. Because children nowadays, if the parent vex with the neighbor, they vexing with the neighbor, they does not say morning or good evening. I walking down the road and I have to tell children, good afternoon. And they say good afternoon.
Yes, they do.
And that is what I am doing now. Instead of they tell me, because I know they're going to pass me street, there is a few of them that are very, very well brought up.
Yes.
I remember losing my purse in a maxi, and it had some money in it, and it was a good bit of money. And that guy came back. He's young. I waited for him, but all the time I was praying and asking God that whoever find it, they could give it to him, so I will get it. And this child brought back the purse for me. So there is still good children.
Plenty.
Good
Course there are.
training.
Plenty. Plenty.
Yeah, and I for this for this Easter, I am trying to pray for them every day. But I want to make a special 2 days
Amen.
that I went the first time and light some candles and so on.
Yes.
But I want to pick the days I will eat fish and so on.
Good.
And see how much days it could be. So, you know, my prayers would be more.
Good.
Yeah.
Well,
So, give me an idea on how to do it, Brother Jason.
Thank you so much
Thank
for
you
calling.
for listening.
Yes.
Thank you for calling. Well, you know, I was remembering that the S generation
Yes.
have their fasting going on now.
Correct.
So we want to big up the S generation, and anybody who knows anyone from that S generation fast who's doing the fasting, just send them a little WhatsApp, a little message. Say to them that the Archbishop is with them. Keep going, keep going.
I will.
How do we fast? How do we observe Lent? Well, there are three practices. The first practice is prayer. Let's increase our prayer. Let's take up a prayer practice with. The second practice that we have is fasting. So let's give up something for Lent. And that might be, we decide on one day a week that we will fast. It might be a cross section of Lent that we will give up something like chocolates or sweet drink or something that we like right across the Lenten period. It might be both. But let's give up something. Some people will give up meat for Lent. Some people will do other things. Some people will go vegetarian for Lent. Some people go vegetarian all year round. That's what Derek. So you give up something that you like, and then the third thing is that the money that you've saved and some extra, you put it together and you give alms to the poor.
Correct.
So that the end of Lent or during the Lenten time of sacrifice, we consciously give away to the poor by giving to a charity that we know that does great work with the poor, or by helping a family that we know, or by participating in one of the ministries of our church. But we do something that tangibly helps the poor. Because the tradition says, you know, alms giving covers a multitude of sins.
I want to give you something here today. Because you know, you asked that the faithful, if they could give up their cell phones. You remember
Yes.
that? But I
Yes.
challenged some UE lecturers and students, you know, during Ash Wednesday service. I said, listen, how about fasting between 6 and 6 from social media? You know what one of the lecturers told me? She said,
What?
it's easier for me to give up talking to my husband between 6 and 6. And she was serious. You know, because we become so addicted
Yeah.
to WhatsApp and social media
Yeah,
that it's
yeah.
difficult for us to put it down.
Yeah. But I wasn't as drastic as you. I just said, take a 2 hours. Start with an hour. Start with an hour where you consciously rest the phone somewhere, where you're up and around, where you consciously leave it alone and you don't touch it for the hour. Start with 1 hour and see what happens. Take that hour now and spend it with prayer. So leave the phone one side, you go to pray one side. And see what happens. So that if we mix and match the sacrifice with the prayer, the sacrifice with the almsgiving, then what we start to have is an interconnected discipline for life.
You said that fasting informs the boundary between my appetites and me.
Between my appetites and
Me.
me, yeah. Because we have grown up in a time where we indulge our appetites without restraint. You feel for something, you're going to get it. We have the money, we have the disposable cash, we have the this, we have the that. So we've lived in a culture where we've gratified ourselves at whim and fancy. Well, delaying gratification is the key to emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence is one of the most important ingredients of success.
Yes.
So we actually enforcing or inviting people to come to a practice that is incredibly beneficial for a successful life. Anybody going to live a successful life has to delay gratification, has to enforce boundaries around our desires, and has to put a space between the stimulus and the response. If every time you had a stimulus, you responded immediately, what kind of person will you become?
Yes.
Not a deeply spiritual person.
Right.
So we have to put the space between the stimulus and the response. We have to put in the abstinence. We have to put in that discipline, that spiritual discipline of sacrifice.
And that's a big challenge for us because there's always this gratification thing. We want always to feel this high. It's almost like being a cocaine addict. We want this constant high. But we have a call, Archbishop Jason. Good evening. Welcome to Shepherd's Corner.
Good evening.
Good evening, Archbishop Jason.
Yes, my dear.
This is Mrs. Mary Martin. I'm a shut-in because I am not well, so I am always inside. Can't go anywhere at all, but I get communion twice a month. But the only thing I do have a priest friend again, like Father Martin Frederick, to come and give me confession.
Okay.
And where do you live?
But I have a grandson inside here, trying to get him to go to church regular, and that is the hardest thing to do
Yes, yes,
because they like to sleep too late.
yes, yes. How old is your grandchild?
Yes, I am Mary Martin.
How old is your grandchild? Hello?
My grandson is 31 years old.
31?
Okay.
My grandson is 31 years old.
Okay, okay.
31 years.
And have you rung the parish and asked to
And
have
he
confession?
have a little son, 3 years old.
Okay. And where do you live?
No, I didn't, after Father Sergio left, I didn't ring the parish to get confession home.
Okay,
But I can't go out.
okay, okay. But
So what I would suggest to you is call the parish church tomorrow and say to whoever answers, say who you are, where you live, you're a shut-in, and they do come to bring communion for you, but you would like to be able to see a priest, and if that could be possible. And if not, if you don't get anybody that way, the next time they bring confession, ask the minister to speak to the priest, for the priest to come to hear your confession.
okay.
Okay?
All right. Thank you for
So
calling.
Deacon,
Thank you for calling. We have 13 more minutes, and I want to go into almsgiving because you say that almsgiving informs the boundary between the other and me, and it is not all about me. What do you mean by that?
well, this is the all about me generation.
Yes.
Everybody is into the to the radio station WIIFM. What's in it for me?
For me, right.
Well, when we do almsgiving, we force a reversal of that type, where we have to look to the other. And we have to recognize that what I own and what I have is really not for my benefit, it's for the benefit of everyone. Because it is really me as a steward holding it for God on trust. And in that sense, it's a stewardship piece now, where we understand that everything I own, everything I have is held in trust for God. Therefore, I should be using it the way God would be using it. And that means we must give a preferential option towards it. And so it enforces the fact that there is this boundary. Pope John Paul II said all private property has a social mortgage.
Right.
It's a big statement. Huh?
Massive.
The same way you have a fiscal mortgage on your house, you don't pay a fiscal mortgage, they come and they take your house.
Yeah.
Well, there's a social mortgage on your private property. You don't pay the social mortgage, they'll come and take it.
Archbishop,
Yes.
we do have another call, and I just want to get them in. Good evening.
Okay.
Good evening, Deacon D. Good evening, Archbishop Jason. I actually want to just take a spin off from the gentleman who called early on about seasonal celebrations during Lent. And I know Archbishop spoke about the weddings in Lent. But in terms of the non-liturgical, which would be the announcements for birthdays, anniversaries, you find some priests in their parish may simply announce it. Others may call you up to the front in a big celebratory way and pray over you, and the congregation outstretch their hands and pray over you. Others may have you stay where you are, pray over you. And some during Lent say, in the spirit of Lent, they will not recognize any of these celebratory type of events. So I just wanted to know if, because it's non-liturgical, I understand that the priests have some leeway in terms of that. But there's a big debate in terms of the evangelizing element of that and how our other Christian brothers and sisters capitalize on that aspect of their celebrations, where they recognize people, they take your number, name, where you're working, email, everything, and they recognize anniversaries and so on. And if during our announcement time, when we recognize those, if the church is lapsing and not maybe paying some more particular focus on that. I listen with bated breath. God bless.
So here's a good question. If you happen to be born during Lent, that means that you should not celebrate your birthday? I don't think so. I happen to be born during Lent. Maybe I'm biased.
Me too.
maybe I'm biased. Maybe I will have to go back and pray about this one. So I don't see the acknowledgement of somebody's birthday or their anniversary as being contrary to the Lenten observance. And people who are born during Lent, I think, are always conscious and cautious about their celebrations. But if somebody is having a big celebration of a major anniversary, then yes, that deserves some marking of the milestone. And some people put it off until after Lent or transfer it. I have been very fortunate. My birthday is St. Patrick's Day. And that was the patronal feast of the parish I grew up in. But that was a celebration day. And my anniversary is St. Joseph's Day, which is also a solemnity too. But I think we have to see the birthdays and the anniversaries more as a moment of human connection with the people who are next to us in the pew. And it's not liturgical. There's no liturgical rule about it. There's no rubric governing it. There's nothing to say. Some parishes don't ever celebrate birthdays and anniversaries. They don't ever do it. And that's why it's done in different ways by different parishes. But I think there's a human community building piece to this, where we acknowledge other people's important dates and celebrations. I would see that as something other.
I want to go back to your text. The spiritual practices of Lent invite us to review the rhythm of our Catholic life and see in it the beauty and the depth we need to move towards missionary discipleship.
Yes. Yes, sir. You know, every Catholic is called to be a missionary disciple. A disciple is one who follows Jesus. A missionary disciple is one who follows Jesus and embraces and enters into the mission of Christ in the world today. And that could be in your family, in your workplace. It could be as dramatic as being called to leave your country and go somewhere else. The Puritan priests and missionary priests, they leave their home and they many of them have gone Paraguay or Africa or different parts of the world. So this notion of missionary discipleship is the ultimate goal to which we have all been called. And that call is what I am after the most. So I'm not after Lent. I'm not after Easter. I'm not after the celebrations or not having the celebrations. I am after helping our Catholics create a path towards this missionary discipleship. That's really where my focus is. And it is because of creating this path to missionary discipleship that I am proposing that during the Lent, we use the time for Lenten observance. So for instance, the Generation S, they do this 24-hour fast, started 6 o'clock this evening, ending 6 o'clock tomorrow evening. And that's a wonderful spiritual practice. When you have a couple hundred young people who choose to enter into the spiritual practice of the church in this time and choose to live together and choose to help each other through the rigors of that 24 hours of fasting and choose to, give up something in this dramatic way and ask people to sponsor so that it's not just fasting, it's fasting and almsgiving, that their fasting leads to almsgiving. I want to say that that's a really incredible witness of our young people to all of us. And it is a witness that we all should take part in, and we all should learn and listen up to and learn from.
What's your key message? What is your key message then to the Catholic faithful? Because, we started off talking about sacred boundaries. We started talking about a time and a season for everything. And I know that we are talking to the Catholic faithful, mainly. I know you want to get everybody on board that, there is this time we should have boundaries and so on. But what is your key message?
Boundaries, boundaries, boundaries. If we want to go to spiritual depth, we have to start choosing boundaries for our desires. And those two things must be kept together. Because if we don't choose to impose boundaries around our desire, then we are saying that we don't choose to go to spiritual depth, because the two things are interconnected and we can't have one without the other. So boundaries, 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 boundaries. And that's what the whole season of Lent is about. That we will choose to put boundaries around our desires, and in that way we will choose to do that around the three practices of prayer, fasting, almsgiving, and in that way we will choose to open the path for us, or to walk the path set before us by God to become missionary disciples.
Lent with generosity of heart. Lent with generosity of heart, bringing fasting, almsgiving, and prayer all together to give that person that generous heart. You say your action step to the faithful says, review your attitude to Lent, your willingness to take on the spiritual practices or not. Look at the times or areas where you are being accommodating and indulging, but also where you have strong boundaries, and have a conversation with Christ about this. We have 3 minutes, 14 seconds.
Lent is a time of deep inner conversion. And so the action step is a traditional Lenten message, in the sense that it is asking each one of us to take on the spiritual discipline of reviewing, of assessing, of looking at checking on how we have or have not taken on our Lenten sacrifice. Because if we have taken on the Lenten sacrifice really well, then what would happen would be the Lent would be taking us to new spiritual depths. And this is kind of a check-in point as we are in this week in Lent, to stop, review, look and see how you have been doing. We have a couple more weeks to come. So because we didn't do so good in the last 2 to 3 weeks, doesn't mean that we keep going in that direction. Stop, review, check, explore, make a new commitment, and go again between now and Good Friday. That's the step, because it is inviting people to step back up to the plate during Lent. If you miss the memo already, come back to the plate today.
Tonight we've been speaking, dialoguing with Archbishop G. Our topic tonight was a time and season for everything. We spoke about ritual time. We spoke about sacred boundaries. We spoke about what was his key message. He talked about the spiritual practices of Lent, invite us to review the rhythm of our Catholic life and see in it the beauty and the depth we need to move towards missionary discipleship. The practices of Lent also invite us to do boundary work. What kind of boundary work? Before you leave, 1 minute, give them some boundary work tonight.
Well, you know, is there something that you really like? Give it up. Wait until Easter Sunday for that again. Is there a particular thing, chocolates or a TV show that you like? So for me, I'm not watching new movies during Lent. I turn off my movies. I love a good movie to relax on a weekend. Okay, I done with the movies for Lent. Giving up different things, choosing to fast on a particular day, choosing to do without certain things on at different times during the Lenten season. These are all the boundary works that we can do. But it is to also look and see how we're working with boundaries generally. You know, obeying the speed limit is a boundary. Not talking on your cell phone when you're in a car, that is a boundary. So have a great Lent. Have a great Lent. Have a great Lent. God bless you.
Lord, with us we pray today.